with that higher yen, Asian stocks fell yet again. You had the Nikkei off by about 1.5% after that big recovery that we saw the other day. We're joined now by a veteran investor in Asia. He's Ivan Vatchkov. He's the head of Algebris Investments Asia Group and also the chief investment officer. He oversees $1.2 billion in assets coming to us from Singapore. Ivan, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, we've outlined so many concerns about what is going on in Japan. For you, is this now a time, though, that you are actually going to buy into Japan?
Hi, Betty. Thanks for inviting me over. I think it's probably foolish to make any kind of predictions of where the bottom will actually be reached in Japan. And there's two things I wanted to highlight first and foremost. Firstly, we've got the context of the world markets where there was a lot of sensitivity already to events unfolding. You had the Middle East crisis, you've had the European bond crisis, and you've also had heightened prices of oil, which was making investing in Asia reasonably tricky given that sensitivity. Add to this what I think is a fairly uncommon occurrence, and that's the non-linear outcomes which one is dealing with when one is looking at a nuclear crisis. It's not something we're familiar with as investors. I think to make any kind of prediction, I would have to be a fairly advanced nuclear scientist. So with that in mind, I don't think predictions are appropriate. I think what we're looking at is trying to assess what the market is pricing in. That's always a tricky task in the best of times, but when you're dealing with non-linear outcomes, it's tough. What I would say, though, is probably a useful rule of thumb. We've had about $600 billion wiped off the combined market cap of Japanese companies.
Right.
I've seen a few estimates of what the damage is likely to be, given what we know now, and that's closer to $200 billion. So that gives you some sense of perspective. As far as we're concerned, I think we are beginning to see some interesting opportunities. We are mainly focused on the financial sector ourselves.
Okay.
So that's one thing we're monitoring very, very closely. And I think that's interesting.
Okay, so financials in Japan. Then, then just give me a sense. Then, what are your investors asking you? What have they been doing, calling you over the last few days?
Well, I think one thing that's been very, very interesting, and that shows you the level of confusion and panic in the market, is that we've seen two very unusual moves that have raised a lot of eyebrows. One is we've had a 15% move in the Nikkei futures, which is a very, very liquid market. That's unusual. And then we've had, obviously, the overnight fireworks in the Japanese yen as well. I think when that happens, most rationality and fundamentals go out the window, and people start trading on instinct, and I think rational behavior is probably not very often applied. So I think when we look at that, it's a classic sign of sort of panic and confusion.
Right,
our investors,
but Ivan, okay, go ahead. Your investors, yes?
Our investors, when they get in touch, are trying to understand the context. They're trying to look at the worst-case scenarios, whether you draw parallel with Chernobyl or with 3 Mile Island. In those situations, they've been saying, look, it seems like it'll be, the human tragedy is obviously huge, but the actual economic impact hasn't been that huge. Is this a time to buy? Is this a time to buy? So that's been sort of the main incoming from investors over the past day and a half or so.
Do they sound panicked? Do they sound nervous?
I think so. That's why I alluded to the unusual moves in these very, very liquid market. I think the nervousness is just huge because it's a bit like an airline attack. You're dealing with a lot of human emotions and the loss of human life, so it's very hard for people to be rational. I think only a few, will manage to trade through this whole episode, by keeping their emotions intact.
Ivan, thank you. Certainly it is tough to stay unemotional about the events going on over in Japan. That is Ivan Vatchkov of Algebris Investments. He heads the Asia unit there.